ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you because I'm looking there because y'all know how I like to pronounce stuff correctly. Winston Daley. He's the founder of Agogos LLC, and he's going to tell you what he does, why he does it, and we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about some stuff that disrupt, dismantle, they recruit, retain, all of the things circling and around education, because that's why we're here. So allow myself to introduce you to our family, because now you're family. Country people, once you come over the house 3 times, get your own plate. So now you're a family. Please introduce yourself and tell us who you are and why.
Oh my goodness, that's such a good intro. Thank you, Benita. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Winston Daley, founder, as you said, of Agogos LLC. Quickly, what Agogos is. Agogos is a digital community for the hiring and support of educators of color. The idea being that it's a place where not only can schools go to find, recruit, and find the resources to retain our educators, but it's also a place where our educators can find each other. And we're trying to build a digital community of practice where our teachers can, at the click of a button, as fast as you put up your tweet or post something to Instagram, you can ask someone about the education system, whether you're in early career, mid-career, or you're near the end and you are a school leader, perhaps someone who's looking to mentor. But it's a place where I want our educators to have an ecosystem built with them and around them, and a place that no matter what their questions are, no matter what they're looking for, we are right there to help them in that moment.
Oh my God, all of the things, like we're going to do all of the things, because you said something that I've only been saying maybe the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And only because I went through business training, an educational ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like businesses and Fortune 500 companies and people outside of education, they have these communities and they've built everything up. And we have that, but it looked a little different, I say, until COVID happened.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because I see my perspective where, I started in the private sector, just a little bit in my background. So I started in financial services and long-term institutional investing. So, I'm in Boston, and so there's a lot of banking, and that's where I started. It was always sort of my dream as a kid. My dad gave me a Warren Buffett book when I was a freshman in high school, and he said, learn what this man did and go do it, like it was that simple. So I started off really early, and I thought that was the key to, wealth and success, right? You hit the markets, you learn how to invest, you get around folks with money, and that's the conversation, and it will help me build, what now everyone's calling generational wealth, which, we can get into those terms and what that means. But the private sector speed is just so different than the education speed. So when I transitioned to working on Agogos, I had to learn sort of a new language, but I want to have that same sort of urgency that you see in the private sector when it's about, making $1 on the market or serving your clients as best. And the idea is about communities. The idea is about our teachers shouldn't be so separated, right? We learned that during the pandemic. What was happening in one school district wasn't happening in another. The teachers didn't really have a place there they could organize their voice. We went so many years where I heard from parents who were running for school boards, whatever their motivations were. We were hearing from, a lot of our politicians on what our schools were going to do. We were hearing from folks who were either in their Facebook groups or on their group chats, saying the teachers are lazy, they need to get back out there. And very rare was the teacher voice heard. You did not hear folks from the classrooms until they got completely fed up and said, we're just not going in, right? Until they got to that point where folks said, we're not going in. Until these things are fixed. Before the pandemic, our water didn't work right. Our pipes were not functioning correctly. My classes were overloaded. How exactly am I supposed to achieve this level of engagement and achievement and success for my students when before all of this was placed before us? It was already difficult. And you're not asking me, how is this going to happen? So, we'll go back into sort of why I started Agogos, but that's the idea around the community, is that it's a place for our teachers with some of the better features of social media. The idea of social media, people being able to organize revolutions, folks building groups together, folks building businesses together, folks just having conversations, that we're taking the better pieces of those and putting it into our community. It's a place where our teachers can find each other, talk to each other, and share across the country.
I love it, because I know, we know about teacher Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I say it's Black Twitter, and then it's teacher Twitter. Neither one do you want us to come for you.
Right.
We have teachers of the Instagram, teachers of Instagram, and then you have podcasts. And like I'm one of the teachers of Instagram. Sometimes I jump on Twitter, but I'm mostly on Instagram. And I was one of the ones on there. Like, don't come for us during COVID. You told us we was all in this together. We all in this. And then the moment y'all get tired of your own children, you want to know why the school's closed. And I was like, because it's COVID. We're in a we're in a global. I had to remind the parent, ma'am, other countries are shut down.
Right. Completely.
Like, we were the, and when I look back, America was like one of the only countries that was still not a cohesive shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
Dubai. My friends that were teaching overseas, Asian countries, Middle Eastern countries, South American, Central American countries, African countries, they shut the whole country down. Mm-hmm. And everybody was on one accord because they were like, we don't even have typical resources, so we need to shut everything down so that we can come together to save lives. And we're going to go back.
How are we going to do this?
Where you want them to sit? Like, how are you going to do 6 feet? And if people don't know, we did not do 6 feet in class home people. We did like 3 to 4 feet. So that's why you still had outbreaks.
That was an incredible argument that we saw during that time, right? It was, okay, everyone go back 6 feet. And then between parents and school administrators across the country, we then reduced it to 3 feet.
3 feet. And
folks were so happy to go to 3 feet. And this is before before the vaccines were widely available. Yeah. And people were so ready to go back to 3 feet. And I wondered and wanted to pause and say, what does that mean for us, where we cannot just shift our thinking completely around the idea that you just stated? We're doing something together to come out of this better, right? We essentially were fighting a war. The amount of people that died during the pandemic is greater than some of our wars, right? In terms of American casualties, right? Maybe not global casualties, in terms of American casualties. That's what we were fighting. It was not just something that folks made up. People were passing. People were leaving us. Millions of people. That means families. That means your students are affected. It means your parents are affected. It means your teachers are affected. It means folks are in harm's way. That's what we're working on. We can, and then it was learning loss. We can catch our kids up. This is an infrastructure that we've created.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be K through 12. It doesn't have to be 4 years of college. It doesn't have to be master's degree. These are milestones that we created. Why can we not begin to shift and change what we created to save lives? Because that's all we really have, right? All we have is community. All we have is helping each other. The idea of just I'm an individual and what I do does not affect you, it does not work if we're building a society and a community. So the fact that we couldn't just shift, it was like folks just got tired. We have a way, we love to be on the wheel, and we just love to go, 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 go. And in this country, it's so ingrained in us to go, 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 go. And somebody's like, it just didn't matter. It's like, oh, well, send the kids there and send them out there and put masks on them. And then the masks are too much. And it was take the masks off. Well, are we trying to protect each other?
No.
Do we care about each other? do we care about our teachers?
We care about the system that several of us was screaming before COVID. It's broken.
Yeah.
It's not working. And I love that you said, K through 12 is something that's a system we created. Why do we still need to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember somebody said, I was talking to somebody and they were like, oh, the kids have lost so much. And I said, so I have friends that come from countries that they grew up in war.
Mm-hmm.
Like they literally I remember one of my coworkers, when I taught overseas, he said they were at home praying and the bomb dropped in their neighborhood and destroyed their home. And they were going through the rubble, finding siblings, trying to save their family. And he just packed up and went to another neighborhood and moved into another apartment. So in my American mind, I was like, what? I don't understand what you're saying. Like, did you just tell me that you just found like the rest of your life and was digging through stuff and packed a bag and went like 2 blocks over to another neighborhood and moved into And now you didn't leave the country, like, because I'm American. I'm like, what? And he's doctor. His brother's a doctor. His sister's a nurse. He's a teacher. What about their learning? Like, what learning loss did they have? Because you can't go to school when bombs are dropping on your house in your neighborhood.
Right.
So clearly, they were okay. So I think, don't talk to me about a learning loss because of a global pandemic. When I have friends who grew up in wars and they're successful. So that's something that we have, like you said, that's something that we haven't been able to shift away from. And I'm glad you talked about the shift, because I want to talk about your company.
Yeah.
Because your company is part of the shift. And I know people are like, that's not, it's not disruptive. It is. And when he explains the company, Agogos, and how it functions and works, you'll begin to understand. If you're listening, because you should be, if you're listening, and then you're going to become a part of it. I'm a part of it. I signed up while I was walking, listening to the other podcast.
Thank you.
And sat on a bench and was like, what am I talking about? And then I was like, oh, wait, I need to get on the laptop. So I was like, wait, I can't do this. I can't see. So tell me how, because one of the things we do here at the podcast is, why does your company disrupt? What does it help alleviate? What level of the foolishness do you end? And so tell us how Agogos does that.
Yeah, so I'll go back a little bit to where it started, and it speaks to your point about disruption and systems sort of being the same. So when I worked in the private sector, as I said, I left that because I wanted to work more with kids. I was kind of tired of going into my office every day, and I was really the only version of me ever in a meeting, ever in a client pitch or anything like that. And so I wanted to work with kids, and I started that through sports and athletics. I'd always played, been coaching for a decade at that point. I just wanted to go into it full time. So at that point, I started working in schools a lot. Whether you're in athletics, anywhere you're around schools, you start to see, so some of the inequalities and the same things that were there from when I was a child. My daughter at that point started going to school, so I got really involved in her school, in the school system. And so in the town where I live, we went from probably in the 90s, when I didn't live here, maybe less than 5% families of color. So by the time I got here, that number was around 30%. But the teacher base never rose above 6 or 7%, right? Regardless of all their efforts. So and we're talking about a school district right outside of Boston, some of the greatest universities, some of the greatest educational infrastructure that you can find. So when I had conversations with our principals, our teachers, our superintendents about, well, how do we recruit our teachers, right? If your parents are saying to you, we want a more diverse base of teachers. We want teachers that teach books and educational materials differently, that know how to differently focus on kids. And they didn't really have a tool. So that's when I thought I could build a tool. And I said, look at all this technology that's around. Why is education so slow to adapt, to change the way they recruit? They were using all of the same ideas, meaning, it's sort of your basic job boards. You put your jobs out there, you hope you get qualified teachers, you hope you get a diverse pool of teachers. And then once the pandemic hit and we were all inside and we had these conversations around George Floyd, and everyone promised to do the reading, and everyone said, people were asking for essentially a syllabus for all of us adults who said, well, I'd never heard of this racism. Tell me more. They started to do their reading. And so the conversation became, well, why don't we have a more diverse group of teachers? And I thought with the tool, well, let's use technology. Mm-hmm. I'm building a space where not only can the schools now proactively find the teachers, not just sitting back and hoping you get great resumes and diverse pool of applicants, but you're actively searching for them. And that changes the way that education feels. It's not just posting a job board, hoping those resumes come into you. It's answering the question from schools. The question is, well, where are the educators of color? We can't find them, right? Do you know them? They'll ask their networks to reach out to the first person of color they know, or, put some of the burden on the teachers that are in their districts and ask them to connect them to friends or to their network. But this is the idea, as Agogos is that network. There's no excuse if you're not on the platform, if you're not searching, if you're not posting, if you're not looking for teachers, then it sends them a message. The schools that are on there are actively looking. We make sure we ask them a couple questions when they sign up, saying why your environment for the Agogos community. What are you actively doing for your teachers of color and your students of color, right? What makes your district different? Pitch yourself. to our educators. And then on the other side of that is a place where the educators now create these portfolios that grow with them. It's almost the idea of LinkedIn, where LinkedIn started, where this is you and your career, but you link to more of that. It's your writings, it's your lesson plans if you want to add it. It's not only your resume, it's, if you're using TikTok, social media, if you're engaging with children differently, or you see education differently, you can put that into your profile. And it says who you are. It grows with you. There's no need for that paper resume anymore, right? Or that sort of simple cover list. Like, no, this is who I am as an educator. You can read my profile here, and there should be enough information about who I am and where I've come from and what I mean, what I'm doing in the space. And then on the other side of that, once you get past that job board, is the community piece. And the conversation we were having off air before starting is saying, when you move to different places, start there. How do you know the climate and the environment of that district, of that state, of that city, of that town? Who are the folks that welcome you in? How do you build a community in a new place? And I think teachers have been sort of discouraged from moving or even chasing for higher in their careers. And Agogos in that community is about making it a real marketplace for teachers, right? Where don't leave after your first 3 years because you've had a bad experience in a school district. You can find another district that wants you. You can find experienced teachers who are mentors. You can simply build a community around the subject that you teach, right? Like science teachers, of West Virginia, or whichever way you want to do it, right? This is a place where you can build communities and find folks. No, don't just be restricted to your own network. It's taking the best pieces of social media and the way we interact online, which became so exploded during the pandemic, is the only way we can stay in touch. And now folks are keeping some of the better parts of that experience and wanting to reach out and find folks, right? And so we're taking those pieces and putting it into Agogos, and putting it into this professional network, because we know how much we need teachers of color. We see the exodus of folks leaving, right? We're talking about hundreds of thousands of folks who are saying, if you're not going to treat me correctly, I'm not going to stay here. But we want that community of support. Maybe some folks that are leaving will come back if we find them a better school district, right? Maybe some of the young folks that don't like the way the pandemic went, they're looking for a way into education, but how do you start, right? And Agogos wants to be able to give them that foot in the door, right? So partnering with universities, nonprofits, anywhere that's feeding teachers of color, we want them to feed them into Agogos so they can stay in touch and they can stay in contact and they can build network. And through that network, build some advocacy, some policy change, some real push for teachers, right? Strengthen numbers, strengthen the voices. So that's the mission.
Oh my God, it's a lot. I was sitting here taking notes.
It is.
Yeah, so all of the things. So I'm gonna go back because you said something that I always get in trouble with. I'm considered a turnaround specialist. So we go into the DF, failing, normally not the best neighborhood schools. And I normally say 2 or 3 years, because if you can't turn it around in 2 or 3 years, you can't see the beginning of a turnaround, then I haven't done my job. And every time, and I was a former military spouse, so we moved every 2 or 3 years. So every time I go in for an interview, they look at my resume and they go, now I have a platform to go to, because the questions that I've learned to ask as an older, seasoned educator, I do share with new educators. Like, no, you need to interview them. Because one of the things I'm always going to ask is, why so many teachers leaving your district? And we have to make sure that we get the numbers right, because sometimes the media will make it seem like 100,000 teachers are leaving the profession. Yeah. And you said it, Winston. You were like, they might just be leaving that district.
Yeah.
So it's not 100,000 teachers that are leaving education altogether. Now there's a large group. We're not gonna lie, but some of them just left that district. I've heard of districts not even honoring the resignation letters because they know. Like, it's coming in droves. That's a district thing. Your district is treating your teachers like crap. And the teachers, you said it, they're no longer, the educators are professional. They went to college. We have student loan debt. Like, no, you're not going to talk to me any kind of way. You're not going to treat me any kind of way. I don't have to stay here. I can go to another district that's going to pay me more and respect me more. So then that goes back to what you have developed for us. Thank you.
Oh, and not only, and I love the way you just put the context on those numbers, right? Because when you see them, and you always got to dig a little deeper, you see numbers, 400,000 teachers are leaving. It's like 400,000 teachers are leaving that current position. We never go back, like you said, we never go back to the district and say, well, why is your one district the only one that's lost 75 teachers, right? Or 100 teachers?
Yes.
Why is it your district? How do we do that forensic analysis of what's happening here, right? So what we want to show is that you're talking about being a turnaround specialist and all the different options in education. What Agogos is also looking to be is a place where teachers see the depth of what they can do in education.
Yes.
You know, we've had a lot of private industry folks that have reached out and said, well, we just want teachers we want them for a 2-month stint, a 3-month stint, a summer stint. We want them to help in reviews of certain opportunities. So there are a lot of places to get additional income and add to your resume as an educator. It's not only to be in the classroom. Maybe that's not the space for some folks. You want to make room for people who are going to do the 2 to 3 year stints, and that's what works best for their talents. And you want the folks that are going to want to sit somewhere and be in the same community of kids, and they can't let them go, and they want to love on them for 30 years. You got to make that space as well.
And I'm glad you said that. Both spaces are needed. Like, I promise you, like, I've got out of tickets because they're like, your mama, you look like, is that your mama? It's like, man, that was my favorite teacher. Go ahead, tell her. I'm like, wait, let me write your name there. I'll be serious too. Wait, let me write your name there. You are who? And they be like, your mama taught me and my cousins. My mama taught families, like you said. I love that. My aunt, my godmother, like, or uncles. Me, yeah, no, not so much. And I remember I'm loyal to education. That doesn't always mean I have to be loyal to that district.
Right.
It means this district over here needs me. Like, even like you said, like, why aren't we going back to that district and saying, hey, you have 75 vacancies and you start in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Before I send somebody over there, I need to talk. We need to have a conversation because I can't, something's not right. And it's not even, something's not right.
Yeah.
Or like, go ahead.
So even now in Agogos, I'll sort of share with the folks where we are. Like we're a startup company, right? Think of us as Facebook back when you needed a edu email address, or Gmail when your friend had to send you a link. Like we're very early stage, and so for this entire summer, we're free. We're free we're always gonna be free for teachers. We're free for schools because what we're building is a community and that connectivity. We want to hear from our schools that are posting positions. We want to hear from the teachers that are on there looking for positions and really be able to have a curation of what's needed in a space, right? We don't want to be faceless. I'm going to say 99% of the schools that are on our platform have spoken to me individually.
Wow.
Right? Either before they join the platform or after they join the platform. And we have a conversation about their hiring history, what their needs are, what it means to be with us as an early adopter, because we're going to care a lot about the folks that are willing to start with us and take the journey with us and be there for the ups and downs. Folks that are giving us feedback, watching all the changes, watching everything grow, because a year from now, Agogos will be in a very different place than where we are now. But we're very early on in talking about building community. And I think my need for community comes from, an immigrant to the country. Came here at 10 years old from Jamaica, a very small family, and you really try to figure out the new space you're in. Yes. So I did it through friends in school. I did it through watching American movies and TV. I did it through playing sports, right? Playing baseball. I tell people all the time when I came here in 1988, 89, playing baseball was one of the greatest ways to learn American history, because that sport took you through wars. It took you through race. It takes you through free market. It takes you through just what America is. That's why it was America's pastime, right? It tracks the history of this country from its start. And if you read and if you care about it, you learn a lot about it. A normal kid coming here from Jamaica is not going to know the history of Jackie Robinson and desegregation and what he went through, or learn about Willie Mays and Ted Williams and guys that fought in the war and then came home and played baseball. So that was how I was finding community and learning about the country and building. It was just always in that space of, I don't know a lot of people here. I have to constantly be building relationships with different sorts of folks, and how do I find them? And so I think that's where my attraction comes to, from like even all the community building I've done or working in the communities and leaving a career behind to put that together. Is like that's the only way I knew I could survive in this new country, was having a community of different people across any subject, any racial barriers, religious barriers. Was I needed to know a lot of folks and learn very quickly. And so I see that space had not been created for educators. You talk about the great programs across the country that are there, like nonprofits everywhere. Your education, your history and education is so limited sometimes by your zip code, right?
Yes.
You know the place where you are. But what about the folks everywhere else in the building? What are the pieces you can take from them? What are the pieces they can take from you? Where can you just share? What do conferences start to look like if there's really this connective tissue where everyone from every state really pours in and can really find each other, right? What does that look like in terms of strength? Where we're not teacher Twitter anymore. You're off Twitter. You're just on the Agogos. Everybody's there, right? It's not just trying to find folks in a space that wasn't created for them, right? And carving out your niche. This is the space that was really created for this, right? And every voice, every teacher that's on there is a part of the building of it. And it's not just for the profit, it's for the community space of it.
What's the meaning of Agogos?
Agogos is the Greek word for leader, Agogos. And it's the root word of pedagogy. Pedagogy meaning leader of children. And you see in other spaces like demagoguery, where that's leader of people. So I wanted something. So I was always going to have something that was an offshoot of pedagogy. The original name was Goji, but with goji berries and that sort of thing, it was going to get confused.
Yes.
So I went back a little further to get some of the root words, and I thought Agogos was quick, got to the point, and it focused on education, and not only just education, but being a leader in education.
So those of you who are listening, pedagogy does not mean where we actually use it in education. Let's fix that, because I knew that. We know that's not, we're using it wrong, and that as educators is a little embarrassing. I need y'all to stop. All right, I'm gonna switch over here, and I go. So you were in Boston. Your dad gives you a Warren Buffett. I've never heard that before. Gives you a Warren Buffett book at how old?
Probably 14. Okay, so I didn't grow up with my dad. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't grow up with him. We had a good relationship.
Yeah, but the simple fact that he's like, here's a Warren Buffett book, read it. Like, I've never heard anybody, father, go here, read a Warren Buffett or a Bill Gates book, which I'm intrigued by that, because I'm like, okay, so that makes sense, because it's like, read it and follow whatever rules he has in here to become successful.
Yeah, and so
go ahead.
I'm sorry. So my dad, yes, like I said, so we didn't grow up. I didn't grow up with him. He came to the U.S. probably 15 years before my mom and my sister did. And they were not together, but they always had a great relationship. And he was always a part of my life, just in terms of, if he wasn't there physically, he was at least there financially when need be. And it was never a contentious relationship between the two of them. So that was okay. So he always would send me gifts. And once I outgrew sort of, the cars and everything, he started sending me books. So he gave me the Warren Buffett book. He said, read about this man. He's the richest man in the world. I didn't know who Warren Buffett was at the time. He said, read about, he's the richest man in the world. And one of the things that always stuck out to me was, couple things about his investment and the way he started was that he went to his friends and family and they believed in him. And that was his first start in terms of investment. So right there, we're talking about community. Warren Buffett is a product of the community of folks around him. And one of his investing styles was investing in American staples, right? Stuff like that he thought would never go away, like Coca-Cola. Right. So no, this is an American product. It will be back, right? And so investing in people, from your community, and also investing in things that you think are staples, things that are never going away, that you can only improve upon. And just his style was, to me, more in line with, I was never going to be the person that wanted to exploit as much as possible to get ahead. And he did it, in my view, without exploitation, right? Without sort of that ruthless piece of capitalism. Early on in the beginning. And so I always took that piece. And so I got really into the markets. I presented at the Federal Reserve when I was 17, 18 years old. There's some tough stuff in there too now, Benita. I was not a perfect student. I'm going to tell you that. I was not a perfect student. I may or may not have been, kicked out of a high school or two. But that's the journey.
At times we see a huge cultural issue when you have students who are of color, or I always say of culture. Don't say that. Students who have of culture, of color, and their educators in the classroom in the building are not. And so the word that keeps coming up is disrespect. How do we bridge it? Because in my classroom, you rolling your eyes at me, you sucking your teeth. It is disrespectful, but I'm not going to kick you out. And I just be like, I hope they don't get stuck. Like, where it may be in a different teacher's class, they're going to get kicked out. How do we, as we're recruiting, and as I'm trying to get to understand that culture of that school system, the culture of that school, how do we, through Agogos, how do we figure it out? Because you have to figure it out. Like, I've been a dean before. We get called for everything. And I've had teachers call me because a kid was chewing gum and they wouldn't spit it out. And so I walk up to them like the Baptist Black church usher with a tissue in my hand and come right here under their mouth, and they spit it out, and I wrap it up and I walk out the class.
Yeah. So you're making me go a little further down our product roadmap on Agogos and sort of the change of school culture. There's a lot of folks that are doing work on that too. And those folks need to be included. So in terms of school culture, I think it starts with the leadership, right? So your school leaders, your principals, your vice principals, your curriculum coordinators, whatever the leadership structure is in your school. And I think by a school leader signing on to Agogos, it's an acknowledgement that what you've been doing previously is not working. And it's an acknowledgement that you're willing to try new things, going to a new space. And it's hard to try new things in education, right? Whether you start with the bureaucracy of getting it approved, or how many people do you need to talk to first? How many trial runs do you need to see before something can be implemented? Or, when you do your PDs and your trainings, is it ongoing? Is it just one day, or does your school leader constantly reference it? Do you change the policy and structure of the school of what's expected? So I think with the school leader first being willing to sign on to Agogos and actively recruit a diverse population of teachers, it says something about that school and that school leadership. Now, when you're bringing those teachers in, you're letting them know early on, because if they're marketing themselves and if they're saying, well, you need to pitch to me just as much as I need to pitch to you, they're asking you questions about your school environment. They're asking you about your disciplinary history. They're asking you about, well, how do you treat students that look like me? How do your teachers relate to its ever-changing student population? We know that over 50% of our kids identify as non-white.
Yep.
Or multiracial, and we're still at less than 20% of our teachers do. So right there, you know that you have a dominant culture standing over minoritized students. So unless there is some sort of acknowledgement of that and the changing of that in your teacher base and using the tools to change your teacher base, how can you change the structure and the culture, right? And I don't want to send our teachers into the space where they become, what I call like the Office of Black Affairs.
Yes.
Where the one teacher is now the discipline. They are, well, can you go talk to Mr. So-and-so? He won't listen to me. And because you have a different connection with the students, or the students may speak to you in a certain way, or you have a different patience and relationship with them, that now you're responsible for them. And that school leaders are seeing that and saying, that's not what we want. We want all of our educators to take that time, as you just said, and have the child spit the gum into the tissue, and not take some of these things to be such attacks, because they're young, impressionable children. And so to talk about your point about being that 2 to 3 year turnaround specialist, right? And saying it takes about that amount of time, it's what we're going to be asking our schools for, is that when you sign on to Agogos, it's a 3-year commitment. You're saying it takes more than a year to change our culture, that we're using all the information on your activity on our site, and we're using feedback from our teachers to talk to you about your school culture, saying, hey, you've had a post up for 3 months, you haven't gotten any clicks. Here's what our teachers are saying about why you're not getting any clicks. Or you've interviewed 6 or 7 people for a position, didn't make any hires. Give us some feedback as to why none of those folks fit what you were trying to do. Or you had some folks leave the district. We asked them for feedback on why they left, and here's the report. And not saying that Agogos is ever going to be the company that comes in and does changes around school culture. There are people that are experts in that. Right. What we do want to do is put you in touch with those folks. Right? Yes. We're never going to say that we're experts. We are a platform that's putting people together, right? A platform that's building a new way forward. So if we know trusted people that are doing great turnaround work, great school culture work, great in-depth, PD with follow-up and, milestones, then we're going to put you in touch with those folks. These are the folks that have done great work in schools, and you should connect with them. Not doing that guessing game. I don't know if you've been in a situation where schools were like, oh, we need to have some training happen. Does anyone know someone? And then how can you attest to how well that person's going to do? And if that person is just hired ad hoc, what is their incentive to come back and check on you, right? You would never just give a student the, sort of the homework with some written out problems and some instructions, and they never check on, did they get it? Did they follow up? Did you give them a second test to say, well, do you now understand the materials, and just leave them to their own devices, right? So that's what we want to be in terms of a platform, right? If our schools are saying, hey, we need real help with our culture and we're struggling, and our student base is diversifying faster than we can even process it as school leaders, then we're going to say, okay, here are some things that we're trying to see, and it may take a little while to get it, but we're a proactive company and platform.
So I have 2 questions. My first question is, so say I am me and I have a pod. I'm not even a real school. I'm a micro school. I'm an unschool, homeschool, hybrid situation that's going on. Can I join?
Of course. Now I'll tell you, look, my heart lies with the public schools.
Got you.
But Agogos is bigger than just my heart, right? We got to find as many places for folks to succeed as possible. So if micro schooling works best, and that's, to me, I sit from a different position. I'm in Massachusetts, surrounded by some of the greatest universities in the world, great educational infrastructure, right? Urban infrastructure. Our Boston public school system still struggles, but has resources and getting more, right? And great people. But I don't know if that's the story in Tennessee.
Right.
We don't know if that's the story in the Dakotas,
right,
or in Iowa, or New Mexico. Perhaps they need something different. Maybe they need micro schools, and that's what's successful in that community. So of course, and maybe there are some teachers who don't want to teach private, don't do well in giant public school systems. Maybe a micro school is the place for them, right? Maybe some of these alternative paths to education is a better place for skill sets of some. And so I want folks to have as much access to as many ways to stay in education, as many ways to teach, as many ways to be a part of a young person's life or a family's life as possible, and seeing all the possibilities that are out there is incredibly important.
Appreciate that.
Also, the idea of unschooling, just telling folks what that is, right? Not a lot of folks know.
And that takes me to my last question, then we're going to switch gears altogether. My last question is, Agogos, how do we, because I know the part of teach, like I'm a teacher, I'm going to go on here.
Yeah.
I already know, y'all listening, I ain't loyal to nobody. I might find some job. Like, girl, I thought she gone. How are we recruiting? And when I say recruiting, not just recruiting me from Tennessee to Boston. How are we recruiting from the HBCUs? How are we recruiting from PWIs? How are we recruiting from alternative programs? Here we have Memphis Teacher Residency. How are we TFA, TLC, like all the T's? Like how does Agogos say, hey, let's connect with you and not only recruit, but let's train you a little bit more. Or say, hey, they need a little bit more training before they can come on here. How does that look? And I know let me say this, y'all. This is an educational tech company that's a startup. We have to support it. It has to be supported. We got to support it. And so we're going through on a podcast so you can listen and hear, so that you can go back to your district and say, this is what we need. Sign up.
Yeah.
While it's free, tell them it's free.
Well, it's free, especially
it's free, and be an investor.
Yeah.
And invest in this. But how are we going to recruit? Because that's what I'm scared of. Like when I leave next year.
Yeah.
Who's the young person? Because I'm old. Who's the young person that I need to mentor to come into? Because I'm ready to go. Like my bags are packed. I can leave them on.
That unwraps so many things, right? It's the idea of someone like yourself saying, I've got 25 years in education. I want to mentor some folks for my role as you transition to whatever is your next spot is, right?
Amazing.
And so what we're looking for is partnerships, right? Starting first with HBCUs. So it's the place folks go right away, say HBCUs. All right, just so everybody knows, if we took every teacher and every education program and all the HBCUs, it wouldn't even be close to enough.
No.
But we need all of our HBCU folks there in partnership. We've had a couple that I've spoken to so far. If you're on the site, you'll see Mississippi Valley State on there. They've been great, had great conversations with Grambling. And I think that still leaves 134 that we need to get to.
Hold on one second. Historically Black colleges and universities, Hampton University, Virginia State, Virginia Union, I'm shouting all of you out. Norfolk State, North Carolina A&T, Fayetteville State, St. Aug, Elizabeth City. Like I'm talking to all of you, Howard. Stop playing. I'm about to call something. Let me get on LinkedIn. We about to, come on. Y'all playing with me. Don't play with me.
That's exactly it.
You should be the first ones in line. Do not play with me. Okay. Go ahead.
Immediately. And it's that support from folks and saying that we're going to partner with the Agogos, that we're sending all the folks that we have in our education program and our HBCUs and say, if schools want to find you, they find you through this site. This is our partnership. Everyone goes to Agogos, creates their profile. Everyone starts to look for positions, right? And this is where the schools are, right? And whatever the HBCUs need, they have a voice immediately on our platform in terms of what they'd like to see added, what they'd like to see changed. And we get to work on that, right? It's not, I don't want everyone, again, the idea of creating a space and spaces that were not made for us, right? LinkedIn was not made with us in mind. Neither was Twitter, Facebook, School Spring, or any of these other places that folks use for either community.
What's the last one you just said?
School Spring?
School Spring?
Yeah.
I never heard of them. Come on, go ahead.
That is another part of the great thing about how sort of divided education is. Everyone in the Northeast uses School Spring.
Yeah, so the South, I'm sorry, I don't know if other people in the South have heard of it. Hit me up on Instagram. Y'all know me. I was sitting here like, school who? Never heard of it. That's so crazy.
It's the #1 job posting site for education.
This is why I ain't got no job. No play.
but it's that difference, right? Because there's so many different pockets, and it, depending on your network and your pocket, what your school uses, that's the lane that you stay in. That's the resources that you know. So I know everything from School Spring. You go on School Spring now and find a few 100,000, but they're a job posting site. Great company, doing well, but they're a job posting site. We're adding more to that than just a job posting site. I can't look at them as they are what they are, and they're going to remain that way, and we're something completely different.
And Agogos is like international. Like when we finish with this and you keep working, it'll be international. Because I'm here to tell you, in 25 years, up and down the East Coast, and I've never been to that area.
Yeah.
But I think I stopped in Maryland. Maryland was the highest I've gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've never heard of the other people, but that's okay. It doesn't matter.
It's all right. It's okay with us. That's all. That's why this is being built, is because even if you think something has such great penetration into a market, there are folks that have no idea, because what we're trying to do is not what they're trying to do. They don't have an interest in partnership with HBCUs.
Right.
They don't want to get to all of the programs that are working specifically with minoritized folks in their communities, right? Latinos for Education, the Library Institute that works with Native teachers on reservations, Urban Ed Academy out in Oakland, right? He Is Me here in Boston that's working with young Black men to get them into the field of education. The Teachers Lounge here in Boston that's working with Black and brown teachers that are working with them, right? All these folks are going to the HBCUs and saying, we want you guys here with a voice on the platform telling your not only undergrad, but also your graduate students, also your alumni, that
Yes.
this is where we're partnering and having conversations about what we want out of education as folks of color, because we're saying that our kids make up most of the education system.
What do
I
you do?
can go on a whole other rant, because I do a lot of work in the social justice space. I can go on a whole other rant about how men have been turned away from anything that's seen as a caring profession.
Well, also, if you marginalize me while I'm a student, why would I want to come back? Why would I want to come back and work in something that made me feel less than of when I was in it? That's not a positive image for me. And I understand. Like,
Yeah, there's so many steps to what took men out of the classrooms, right? Especially Black men.
You said it. Matter of fact, we're gonna roll that into my controversial corner. So I do this thing this year. It's called Controversial Corner because I'm a disruptor and I don't really care. So here's your controversial corner. I asked the mental health advisors that I want to see. Their answer did not line up with what I thought. So we are in a new era. I don't know what era this is of education we're in, because I feel like COVID opened the floodgates, and as quickly as, like you said, as quickly as it looked like we were going to shift and change, everybody went back to same thing. And the rest of us were like, but I thought we was gonna fix it.
I thought we were all gonna do the reading, and then we were gonna come back and we were gonna be different people. Everybody said, nope.
We don't want to be different. We just want
the same old.
So do you think as we produce, well, I don't know, we producing more educators because they're not there, but as we produce more educators, should they have more classes about social emotional learning, or should they have more classes about psychology and psychiatry as they walk into the field of education?
Yes, and yes, all of that.
Okay, say yes. Okay.
I think all of the ways we train our teachers should be changed and will be changed. And I think it will be changed because our teachers want it to be. Schools are already changing some of the infrastructure of what is necessary, right? Putting in social workers in schools, putting in adjustment counselors, changing the idea of what your school psychologist does, the integration with the parents as well, because the kids live in the schools, for 12, 14 years, however long they're in, they live in those schools, right? They bring everything with them. The outside world doesn't stop when they walk into the classroom, and a lot of their interactions in the classroom is based on what's happening to them in the outside world. So you can't just educate a kid only between those hours and think that's the only part that matters. So I think our teachers are having a bigger voice. I think some of our school leaders are. And I think the biggest change for that to happen is we need some fearless school leaders, especially in these times, right? We need some folks who are saying, no, we're not taking the books off the list. Read the books, right? No, I'm not going to review the book for you. We're going to read the book, right? We need some folks that are saying, no, our school is actively anti-racist, and here's the reason our schools are actively anti-racist. And it's not just a DEI statement that's going out, because we're teaching our kids reality. We're teaching them about the way society was built before they become active participants of it, and what it means when you are an active participant of it, right? What is anti-racism? Why are we changing the way we read the books, analyze the books, the way we teach the books? Because we are growing, we are learning, and doing the same things that we did 30 years ago makes no sense. The children are different now. They learn more before they come in. They have more tools, but those tools have also put undue pressure on them, right? You and I are never going to know what it's like to grow up from the minute I'm 1 year old. I can be in front of an iPad.
Yes.
The world is at my fingertips. I see my friends all the time. I have all this connectivity, but then I also have all this pressure. And I have all these ideas of things that didn't exist before, right? This is one of the first generations going to be expected to go to not only high school, college, grad school, and have the family and kids and make more money than ever because things are more expensive than ever. And you still have the same standards you need to live up to. So how are we changing for our kids as the world is moving so much faster than we're even processing right now. It's one of the things about the pandemic that bothered me so much when I was building the Agogos. And one of my major missions is, why can't we just say what we did before was for before? And what we're doing now needs to be something different, because these are just different times. And we need to see that and act on that. It can't be the same.
You can't. And I say that all the time. So those of y'all who follow, that are my Instagram followers, y'all know I say all the way we taught pre-COVID cannot.
It's not the same.
We don't, the kids, and you said, I love how you said that. The kids are not the same. We don't have the same type of children. I watch people on TikTok and Instagram show their babies that were born during COVID. These babies came out looking around the room. They like eyes wide open, moving their neck. I was looking, and the parents were like, yo, what is this? Like, you're not supposed to be 3 hours old doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And just, they're like, the 9-month-old is walking. Who 9-month-old is walking? Like, so they already coming out advanced more than we've ever seen babies do. And so why would you think that the 6th grader that's walking into your middle school is the same way you can teach a 6th grader that walked in pre-COVID? They're not the same children. And we can't expect, I don't know, I just feel, this year I feel like I walked back into the Twilight Zone. And I promise you, I feel like I walked back into a class that I taught in the 1900s. And I was like, this can't, and I mean, with the rules and the regulations and the restrictions and the foolishness of it all. And I was like, I can't do this. You're trying to restrict me as an educator, but I've already moved on. I've learned how to do different stuff. I teach an 80-minute class that I have to chunk. I got to teach my kids in 20, 25-minute chunks or I lose them.
Yeah. There's another side of that I can say. For my daughter during COVID, she was remote. She loved it. She's one of the kids that said, no, I love it. Just give me my assignment and I'll just do the work, get it all done. I have my own time. I do stuff in my room, I wander around the house. I make my own lunch every day. She's ready for college. There were those kids who said, no, I love just getting to work. I don't have to deal with all the social stuff at school. I can see my friends when I want to see them. I'm just going to do the schoolwork. I can message the teacher, send them an email. They talk to me directly. Like, she looked at it as it's just pure education for me now.
We cannot go back to pre-COVID thinking we're going to teach.
I am 43 years old and I'm a different person post-COVID. I've spent the last 3 years in my house, left my job to start a company. My hair is longer than it's ever been. Right? You talking about hair and right. So I wear the turban when I get my hair twisted. My hair is longer than it's ever been. People will not recognize me. My mission for things that I'm pushing for is more refined than before COVID, right? I was at a place, I told them, hey, I would love to stay here, but I think there's something bigger. And I'm gonna take this time to try and build it. And if I fail, I fail, but I can't fail if I start.
I feel like I need to stop the podcast right here. So I have other questions, but we're gonna stop.
All right.
I'm gonna ask you the closing questions because that was powerful. Because I think if all of us look and see where we are personally, professionally, then we will understand how education and as an educator, the lessons and the teachings for our students should be progressive also. So here we go. My friends call me education concierge because anything they ask about education, I normally find it, except for school spring. Or like my friends that are parents that, they need help with IEPs, or my friends that are like trying to transition schools or whatever. They call me like B. They were like, you are concierge. Like, we call you, you set it up, you hook it up, you connect us with people. I'm like, bet. If you and your wife, your significant other, your spouse, no children, can go anywhere in the world, don't worry about money, and we're going to act like it's before COVID, so we're not going to worry about restrictions or any of that. Where would you go and why? And it could be a play, It could be a location. It could be a restaurant. It could be anywhere. Where would you go and why?
This is going to be a little bit informed by a TV show I've been watching recently. And so I've always, no matter what industry I was in, found inspiration for my work in other places, like unique places. So, if I'm in the private sector, I don't read a bunch of finance or self-finance books, right? I read books about art, tech, creation, because I need different forms of inspiration to see it. So I've been watching a show called The Bear on FX. And in that show, they take cooking in the back of a sandwich shop to such an elevated level. And they keep talking about this restaurant. I think it's called Noma. I think it's either Sweden or Norway. And it's only open a little bit. But the level of technique that they put into making that food, it was something I would like to see. And so I'm thinking about technique and creation and the way different people create, the level of intensity and focus it takes folks. And it's, it's sort of me backstopping something I think is a weakness of mine, is that I tell my wife the difference between the two of us is that she can do one thing for 100 hours. I want to do 100 things for 1 hour.
I love how you said that. Some people can do one thing for 100 hours. And then some of us, me included, need to do 100 things for 1 hour. They call us multi-creatives.
Yeah. But sometimes you need that person that does the one thing to look at you and go, do it for 2 hours. Do it for 2 hours. All right. Don't you just sit there and just do this thing for a couple hours.
You got too much on you. Just pick 2 things to do.
Just do it. You're right. And sometimes what happens for us is that you get backed into that corner. It forces you to just do the one thing. And the work will come out great. But sometimes it forces you to be backed in. And I want to take some of that out of myself. Like, I don't got to get backed in. Like, maybe I do for hour 15, hour 20.
Yes. And so, look, everybody needs a good therapist. And this is what my therapist was. He was like, come on, come back in. And I was like, she's like, reel it back in. I was like, okay. I've heard of Noma. I'm a foodie.
Yeah.
Also, I would say Napa Valley too has amazing restaurants similar to Noma. But yes, it's in Switzerland. I don't know if it's still open.
Is the Bear leading me the wrong way? You made me Google this. Because they got to reopen now after being on the show so much.
So it's Noma, and it was another one. One of them closed. I can't remember which one. But if you like stuff like that, I know you watch Top Chef then.
Yeah.
So Top Chef, and then on Netflix, what's the name of it? I think of it and I'll send it to you.
Iron Chef. They got Iron Chef on there now.
Yes, it's one more. But it's old now. It's like the chefs in there from around the world. And every episode they pick a different country and a different cuisine. And when I think about it, I'm gonna send it to you and your wife.
Yeah, send it to me.
So good. But thank you so much. I have enjoyed the pregame. I've enjoyed our conversation in the Education Concierge podcast. I'm excited about your company. In my head, I've already created a job for me. It's like, this is gonna be my new job. No, we're gonna talk offline.
Send me all ideas, please.
Right, there are some people I want to connect you with for your company, get it started, do some different things. This is why I do the Education Concierge podcast. I love connecting and collaborating, but I also like conversations about education so that we all know what's happening. And so we're just not in that little egg carton. We need to just come out and see what's going on and jump into the pool. It's because I'm a good old Baptist country girl. The doors of the church are open. And as the guests on my show, we're going to let you close it out. So you can close it out with a poem, with some inspiration, some dedication, whatever. But also, before you do that, let us know how to connect with you on social media. And then you're going to close it out for us. Thank you for coming.
I'm going to put my connections at the end, and I'm going to close it out just with a statement. I always remember the statement from when I was getting my undergrad degree. Is one of the books I was reading about business. And the line said, to be successful, you either got to be the first, you got to be the best, or you got to be different. So at Agogos, we're trying to be two of those things, the best, and we're trying to be different. And we're different in the folks that we are targeting, the folks that we are listening to, the folks that we are connecting with, the people that we want to have on our platform. And we're going to be the best because those people, those early adopters, the folks like yourself that really see the vision and where we're going, they're giving us ideas and feedback and input that no one has asked for before. No one's had a space for it to really be coalesced and grouped and collected. And that's what we're doing at Agogos. So I'll leave you all with my contact information. The website is www.agogos.io. You can find me on Twitter at Winston Agogos. You can see me on LinkedIn, Winston Daley, or Agogos LLC. Go to the website, sign up, send me a message, find me on Twitter, find me on LinkedIn, find me anywhere. I won't put my email here because you got to go to the website first before you can email me. So at least do me that solid. And I look forward to just building, hearing from folks, and building something that's just doesn't exist. And that's what we're trying to do, right? You just called us creatives. It's making something that does not exist in the world and making it better and different.
There it is. Hey, everybody. My name is Benita G. I'm the Education Concierge. This has been a conversation with the Education Concierge. Hey, you know we're now on YouTube, so you'll see this video with some editing because I was messing up. But you'll see this video. Thank you so much, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Thank you, Benita. Bye.